Hey guys, welcome back. JC here. A few of you have asked me to make a video on acronyms and terms and phrases that we use in this hobby, so here it is. I just shot this video and it came out to be 45 minutes long, so I'm going to try again but make it as short as possible. So let's jump right into this. I've made a Microsoft Word page of all the acronyms that I could think of, so I'm sure I'm forgetting some, but I feel like this is the majority of the ones that we use. First up, if you don't already know, speaking of phrases, talking about these things that we build, people use the term drone, SUAS, or small unmanned aircraft system, quadcopter, multi-rotor, multicopter. You can use anything you want, but some guys in this hobby, they frown upon it whenever you use the word drone because, I mean, I can agree with them. The mainstream media and the general public has tarnished the name. They've made the word drone seem like it's a horrible thing used only for spying on people or killing people with rockets and stuff. Personally, I do use all the terms, including drone, because I feel like we shouldn't hide from them. I feel like we should educate them on the difference between the two. But it's up to you. RX and TX, this is probably the most confusing acronyms because, well, it means receive and transmit, but it can mean anything. This is a TX, or a transmitter. But this is also a TX. It's a video transmitter. When referring to a video transmitter, most guys will add a V in front of the TX for VTX. Same thing for video receiver, VRX. Also, on your flight controllers with your UARTs, you will see TX and RX for transmit and receive. So they could be talking about the UARTs on the flight controller. If you ever see DSM, DSM2, or DSMX, they are referring to spectrum receivers, transmitters, or modules. It's just a way of, I guess you could say it's a type of communication that Spectrum products use, where it's different from Futaba or FreeSky, stuff like that. Also, FreeSky, I know it's written FR Sky, but it's actually pronounced Free Sky. I don't know why. I've been questioning this for the longest time. I actually say FR Sky just to piss people off because it makes no sense, but it's pronounced Free Sky. ESC, we've all used them, we've all seen them. It actually stands for Electronic Speed Controller. That's exactly what it's doing. It's controlling the speed of your motors. One shot 125, one shot 42, and multi-shot. I won't go into a detailed explanation of the differences, but one shot 125 is the slowest of the three. I'm not saying it's slow, it's still really fast. Matter of fact, I still use one shot 125 ESCs. But one shot 42 is faster, and multi-shot is the fastest of the three. LC filter, this is something that suppresses the noise in your power supply or power lines. You'll see people talking about LC filters, mostly referring to video transmitters or cameras, to clean up the video and remove some of the noise. But you can also use LC filters on flight controllers. Some ESCs actually have them built in. Now, as far as noise isn't actually an audible sound that you can hear. They are actually referring to, you'd have to use a scope to see exactly what I'm talking about, but noise is a bad thing. Another word for noise is going to be dirty. They'll say my video feed is dirty. They're talking about noise. Linear ESCs and opto ESCs. Linear ESCs actually have a 5-volt BEC built in, or a 5-volt voltage regulator built in. So that way they can power the motors with a lot of voltage, but they can also send 5 volts out to other devices to power those devices with 5 volts. Opto ESCs don't have that option. Linear ESCs are typically larger because they have these additional features. Some of them also, like I said, have LC filters built in, or like a capacitor. A capacitor and LC filter isn't exactly the same thing. They're close enough, but they're not. They run hotter because they have the built-in BEC, where optos are usually smaller, lighter, and don't get as hot. CF, someone could be talking about clean flight, or they could be talking about carbon fiber. FPV is first-person view. It's just what it's called whenever you are looking through a camera mounted on your multi-rotor through either goggles or a monitor, because you're getting the first-person view of the multi-rotor. OSD is an on-screen display. It's just a way that we can place text into our video feed so we can actually see our voltage, current, RSSI, even GPS coordinates, elevation, you name it. Prop is short for propeller. Throttle, aileron, rudder, and elevator. These four terms are what actually the fixed winged airplane glider guys use. Us multi-rotor guys actually use different terms, but it's the same thing. Throttle is going to be throttle for both sides. Now, aileron, it actually means roll for us, which is this way. Rudder is going to be yaw, which is this way, and elevator is pitch for us, which is this way. JST stands for Japanese Solderless Terminal, and they're talking about these JST connectors. But this is a pet peeve of mine because people will say, yeah, just put a JST connector here, or this device uses a JST connector. There are actually many different JST connectors. Normally, they're referring to these really big 2-wire red JST connectors, but there you have JST-SH, JST-ZH, JST-XH, and many more. Not only do you have those are referring to the pin spacing, so you have different sizes, where this is going to be one of the larger ones. You also have a different number of pins. That's why I usually say exactly which JST connector I'm using in my videos, because you can't just say it's a JST connector. CG is going to be center of gravity. They're referring to moving your battery usually, but you can also move other things around to get your center of gravity actually in the center of your multi-rotor to get the best performance. RTH is going to be return to home. You'll see this if people are talking about like a GPS stuff. It's a GPS feature. Or sometimes they will use RTL, which is return to launch. Both mean the same thing. RSSI is receiver signal strength indicator. It's just a way of us knowing the signal strength between our transmitter and receiver to know when we are about to go too far and lose that signal. BEC or BEC or UBEC or UBEC is battery eliminator circuit or universal battery eliminator circuit. Fancy word for voltage regulator. It's not the same thing exactly, but it's close enough. It's basically a voltage regulator. VBAT. Some flight controllers don't have the built-in BECs, so to get your voltage in your telemetry or on-screen display, they have VBAT pins where you apply the full voltage of the battery to it, so it will know what the full voltage is, so it can place it in your on-screen display or video telemetry. Volt ADJ, which means voltage adjustable or adjustable voltage regulator. You'll see these on some PDBs. It'll say it has a 5-volt BEC and a volt ADJ. You can just they have a screw, and then you just take a small screwdriver, turn that screw, and you can actually adjust how much voltage is coming out of those pins using that screwdriver. Trig, you see this on flight controllers. That's mostly used to add in a sonar sensor. You can use it for other things, but it's mostly sonar. VCC, they're referring to voltage. MISO, MOSI, SCK, SCL, and SDA. I won't go into the differences between all of those. Just know that some of those are used to connect devices, some of them are used for developers, and a few other things. PWM, anytime you see PWM, they're mostly referring to a receiver. Sometimes they could be talking about servos and stuff like that, but it's pulse width modulation or modified. A PWM receiver is going to have, say it's an 8-channel PWM receiver, it will have 8 individual wires to get those 8 channels. For us in the multi-rotor hobby, this is kind of outdated. Most of us either want PPM or S-Bus because they are so large, and it's also a lot of wiring. PPM is going to be pulse position modulated or modulation or modified, however you want to use it. For example, if you use a FreeSky receiver with PPM, you can get 8 channels, but instead of using 8 individual wires, you will use 1 wire and get 8 channels through that 1 wire. S-Bus or serial bus, this is actually the best option of the 3 as far as multi-rotors, unless you need some guys are going to say, oh, PWM receivers. Well, I'm not hating on PWM receivers. I'm just saying if you don't need one, then S-Bus is going to be the best option. The signal speeds are faster than PWM, but also, say like you have a FreeSky S-Bus receiver, you will get 16 channels instead of the 8 of the PPM receiver. PIDs, they stand for proportional, derivative, and integral. It's just the way the flight controller's way of doing a bunch of calculations to help it stay in the air. CGS is ground control station. This can mean anything. A ground control station could just be an external receiver on the ground with an antenna plugged into it, and you have that run to your goggles. That's technically a ground control station. Now there are way more sophisticated ones. I mean, I've seen some where guys have like 2 laptops and they have like GPS linked to it and a bunch of crazy stuff, but there's some really cool GCSs out there. RTF, ARTF, and BMF. RTF is going to be ready to fly. You'll see this on a lot of websites when you're purchasing parts. They actually sell multi-rotors that are RTF, ready to fly. That means you just buy it and it's ready to go. ARTF, almost ready to fly. These are usually missing one thing or 2 things. Most of the time it's just a receiver, so you can buy that and then add in your own receiver and then it's ready to go. BNF is bind to fly, or bind and fly. This comes with a receiver but not a transmitter, so you will have to use your own transmitter and then bind it and it's ready to go. RTL is ready to launch. If someone is helping someone else saying, alright, so you've done this and you've done this, okay, now get it RTL, so you can get ready to do this. So ready to launch. Gyro, short for gyroscope or gyrometer. It's up to you, whichever one you want to use. ACC is going to be accelerometer. IMU is inertial measurement unit. It's actually a way of combining the gyro and accelerometer into a controller, and that's basically it. Baro, or barometer, or barometric altimeter or altimeter, however you want to say it. It's a way of knowing how high you are off the ground, but it's not your elevation. Don't get those two confused, because with GPS you can actually see what your elevation is. If you're flying 10 feet off the ground, the barometer will tell you that you were 10 feet off the ground, where a GPS unit will see that where you were standing, you were actually 300 meters above sea level, plus 10 meters, so they're not the same thing. I2C is actually pronounced I squared C. It's inter-integrated circuit. It's just a way of connecting sensors to a processor. SPI is serial peripheral interface. It basically does the same thing as I squared C, but it's faster. The circuitry is different how you connect the sensors, but like I said, it's basically the same thing. FTDI adapter is Future Technology Devices International. When someone says that, they are referring to these things, and you use these to sometimes flash on-screen displays. Sometimes you can connect a flight controller to Clean Flight or Betaflight using these through a UART. If your USB has broken off or just stopped working, you can use these. Sometimes, not all the time. SMA, we've always seen this when talking about antennas. It's the connector, but I'm pointing this out because there's also RP SMA. SMA is sub-miniature version A. The RP stands for reverse polarization. You have to make sure that you're buying the right antenna for your video transmitter and receiver, because basically the difference between RP SMA and SMA is going to be male and female ends, the little tip on the end. TVL is used when talking about the little FPV cameras we use. It stands for TV lines. The higher number the TVL, the better the picture quality is going to be. A 400 TVL camera is going to have 400 individual lines to make up your screen, whereas 600 TVL is going to have 600, so it's going to be better quality. AP is going to be aerial photography. Gimbal can mean a few different things. Sometimes they're talking about these things that you can connect like a GoPro or any other camera to, and it can stay stable while your multi-rotor is flying around. The camera actually won't move. But they could also be talking about these things on your transmitters. These are gimbals. These are also referred to as sticks or joysticks. I call them joysticks just to differentiate between the two different kinds of gimbals. Well, actually there's more than that. LOS is going to be line of sight, which means you can always see your multi-rotor from wherever you are standing. BVLOS is going to be beyond visual line of sight, which means you can't see it. NASA is not to be confused with NAS. The NAS like the NAS32 is a flight controller, but the NASA is also a flight controller. The NASA flight controllers are mostly used for GPS builds, and they're very expensive, way more expensive than an A32. So they're completely different, like opposite sides of the spectrum. Payload is sometimes used when talking about your multi-rotor's power to weight ratio. Obviously, we want them to weigh the least amount as possible, but have the most power possible for that really good power to weight ratio. But payload actually refers to how much weight it can carry on top of what it already weighs. Now, some guys actually compete in these like payload competitions. Like they build purpose-built multi-rotors just for carrying weight, and there are some very impressive builds out there. And then WT is going to be wide open throttle. You will see that when people are talking about tuning. And that's pretty much it. Like I said, I'm sure there's more that I'm forgetting. If I have forgotten anything, just ask me in the comment box below and I'll get back to you. But that's going to do it for now, so thanks for watching. Take it easy. I'll see you next time.